As a known human faction enjoyer, it should come as no surprise to you all that my favorite game so far that I played in this early access is Empire vs. Cathay classic Total War style land battle. It doesn't get better than this, guys. And more than that, I'm against one of my heroes of Total War for a long time, Heir of Carthage, the venerable veteran himself, taking the forces of Cathay up against the Empire. I'm under the banner of Averland, but I've got Marcus Wolfhard to lead the way. Some Empire Knights up front screening for the Royal Altdorf Griffites. Been very nice with a Warrior Priest to back them up with some buffs, give them some flaming damage as well. 2 Empire Knights here. Up front, we've got 4 Spearmen with shields, couple of great swords for that sweet AP anti-infantry damage against all that Cathayan armored infantry. Also some crossbowmen for some cheap, flexible shooting. Jade Wizard to keep all that expensive cavalry topped up on health, and the Hellstorm rocket battery for style points, and because it actually does pretty good armor-piercing anti-infantry damage to a wide formation, which you can definitely expect against Cathay. We've got a front line of Jade Warriors here for Heir of Carthage, Peasant Longspears protecting the flanks, Jade Warrior Crossbowmen as a second line here, Rouging War Compass, a single tasteful Sentinel. Got some Halberds protecting the back, Jade Lancers spread all around as well, and a Shogun Lord Lore of Yin with the Talons of the Night and the Ancestral Warriors summoned. So let's get things started. Man, true classic. Love these two factions. I love classic land battle like this with, classic Total War human factions. I mean, this is very much Total War at its peak, in my opinion, in terms of battle gameplay, because you have the typical human factions facing off with standard Total War tactics, but then the extra layer of the magic and the single entities and everything. So let's get up close and enjoy the Cathayan advance under rocket fire here as the Jade Warriors of all stripes invade the Empire lands. This is one of the brand new Empire maps coming in Immortal Empires. Some nasty cannon shots, or rockets rather, landing right in the formation. The Empire, of course, having the much superior rockets. Theirs being armor-piercing. Cathayan rockets currently are not. We'll see, maybe someday. But Marcus is going to be teeing off on the Sentinel here, just focus firing as much as I can. I'm going to push my Royal Altdorf Griffites out here, try and win this side of the cavalry fight fairly decisively, while the other Empire Knights are going to go for a nice frontal charge here to break the Cathayan lines. We're going to follow up immediately with the great swords as well. So just a quick counterattack, basically, as soon as Cathay gets close, in order to break up their advance and not take just like a full standard engagement here. Over on the side, Royal Altdorf Griffites come in. They've got Peasant Longspears on the other side supporting the Cathayan cavalry, but it's still going to be a pretty good engagement for me. I've also got much better speed. The Comet lands there in the distance. All right on my crossbowman, does a huge amount of damage there. And right now we're going to see a clean engagement between Jade Lancers and Empire Knights in just a minute. I say clean. There's some Spearmen on both sides that will go to support. But let's keep a wide view of the battlefield. There's a lot going on right now. There's the Lancers. Just kidding. Let's get in close on this because the Duel of the Fates right here. 2 very similar cavalry units, but without harmony, the Jade Lancers will end up losing out a little bit. I'm going to use my Spearmen to kind of screen out the enemy Spearmen there in just a second. Meanwhile, in the center, if we take a look here, the Great Swords have got into combat, doing a great job against those Jade Warriors, but the Cathayan cavalry is counterattacking through the center. Empire Knights are getting terrified away by the Sentinel. Mark is going to drop some big nets here in order to control just already relatively slow faction, but especially to control those key heavy cavalry units. Marcus definitely feels very strong for that. Beautiful Talons of the Night, though, in combination with the Ancestral Warrior Summon, using both spells at once, get a pretty decisive break on my crossbow line. That's going to be pretty nasty. The Shogun Lord also drops down to try and take out the rockets herself. That being said, Royal Altdorf Griffites have cleaved through 1 unit of Jade Lancers already, overrunning now into some of the Halberds and Crossbowmen. Halberds definitely want to try and stay away from, but as much as possible, we're going to try and disrupt and break off those Jade Crossbowmen. You can see one already had routed and come back from my own focus fire from my crossbows. Doing some decent DPS to the Terracotta Sentinel as well, but that Rouging Compass has been a problem. It's pretty much used up all its bombardments already and wrecked a huge amount of my infantry. I don't know about value-wise, but oh man, I mean, that's a cheap spear, but still, it hasn't paid for itself necessarily. That's all good at the end of the day. Things are looking pretty grim, though. Number of units broken off over here. Thankfully, this Empire Knight is just keeping that Jade Lancer. It's not necessarily... I mean, it is going to be a great trade for me eventually, but it's taking a long time, and I really could use those Empire Knights elsewhere, like to help protect these rockets, for example. definitely under threat. That being said, the center push, Royal Gryphites swept up and around here, got a nice little terror rear charge to break a lot of these Jade Warriors, help those black-clad greatswords looking very cool in their Avalanche color scheme in order to help them break this infantry line. And now the Dread Column, oh yes, sensing the isolation of the Sentinel, all these Demogryph Knights are going to get in here, and some more Duel of the Fates action as the cream of the Empire face off against the hulking construct of Cathay. Very cool. We're going to drop another net there in order to just make sure it stays pinned in. Can't just run away from the Royal Gryphites. Also managed to catch the Shooting Gun Lord in the air. Marcus can get some nice point-blank shots there. Of course, the Shooting Gun Lord can't heal, and I can continue to heal my cavalry. A little bit of an Earth Blood there. Meanwhile, in the back line, greatswords have penetrated pretty far into the Cathayan formation, but there's a lot of numbers of Jade stuff here, and with the cavalry coming back to help break them, Cathay is able to kind of resecure their backline. At the same time, though, I'm able to somewhat resecure my backline. Got a couple of crossbowmen coming back. All my crossbowmen, in fact. Some spearmen there as well. And then this cavalry fight. Jade Lancers come in, get broken up by the Royal Gryphites. The Sentinel's getting low, but a nice Ancestral Warrior summon from Heir of Carthages forces all of my cavalry away. And now we're just going to try and beat these Jade Lancers out in space so that we can then penetrate later, try and finish off the Sentinel. Marcus is going to do a little bit of kiting for the time being with those other Empire Knights. A little bit more Earthblood here to keep those Royal Gryphites topped up, try and get them up to their healing cap at the very least. Finally, my Empire Knights were able to win out this engagement on this far flank, and now, given that Heir is going to push his own cavalry up, Jade Lancers going with the Shooting Gun Lord in combination. Nice support charge there to break my crossbows. This full, full rout on this full entire formation here. Multiple spearmen units. We've got crossbowmen on the run. That being said, though, because his Jade Lancers have kind of left this area, I can now move back with my own Empire Knights. The Sentinel falls to Royal Gryphites just now, and they can now come with the Warrior Priest to also try and just bypass this huge pocket of Cathayan infantry and cavalry and go back and finish off these crossbows. This great sword is also going to come back from rout at a very timely moment. This one Empire Knight, they're going to take the crossbow bolts and actually rout, but they allow this other unit of knights to get back. They hammer home on the very wounded unit of crossbowmen on the far side there, break them immediately, overrun into the second unit. And of course myself, a lot of units back in this open space here with Marcus. He's got a little bit of ammunition left, but we can mostly kite. This one Jade Lancer is going to come try and clean up a bunch of routing units, but you can see I'm maneuvering my spearmen to just keep them relatively close to these crossbows so that these two units can work together to try and finish that Jade Lancer. And all the meanwhile, like I said, great swords coming back. These Empire Knights moving away from the Jade Halberds. Drop a quick rear charge on these Peasant Long Spears, the long-suffering support spearmen that meant to help them in their cavalry fight but ended up wet-noodling this other spear for quite some time, is going to get hammer charged there, and that'll finish that engagement. Again, great swords coming back in. The halberds are busy dealing with the Gryphites, which fully penetrate into that formation there. And we'll mostly be keeping it close in cinematic cam since a lot of the armies have already been broken and dealt with at this point. Just a lot of Empire units, though. I'm trying to do as much as I can to get this isolation engagement, bypass all of these support infantry, that are still trying to make their way back to this part of the battlefield. Doing some great job with the great swords and Empire Knights in tandem to break all of this armored Cathay and crossbow infantry, especially. Super dangerous, but yeah, have to be careful. They did change up the way that the Empire hero cavalry mounts work. Now you only have access to the Barded Warhorse, but it has the speed of the regular Warhorse before, so you get the benefit of the armor and the speed without having to, I think it's 200 points, which is the same as the Barded Warhorse before. Unfortunately, there's no cheap option purely in terms of cost, but anyway, Marcus is going to use up last of his shots there on a net as the Royal Gryphites come in and get a really nice chain tear out on a bunch of Cathayan units. Considering how low they are themselves, I'm just trying to utilize their terror as best I can at this point, but they kind of get caught up. A lot of those units immediately come back from terror route, and suddenly they are like beyond saturated in this huge Cathayan blob, and there's no way for them to escape. So yeah, Demogryph Knights have had a good run here, Royal Gryphites, but it looks like their time is going to come now. That being said, balance of power slightly in my favor, mostly because Marcus himself is so healthy, not to mention these other two heroes as well. And as I mentioned, these units kind of working in tandem, the crossbowmen, the spearmen all together, able to beat back those Jade Lancers, and now forming a final battle line. Truly has been a battle for the ages with multiple phases and just stuff all over the place. Speaking of which, cleaning up a few routing Jade Warrior crossbowmen and now bringing my Empire Knights and Great Swords. These two units in tandem in particular were very, very key for me throughout the course of this battle. Marcus used up all of his ammunition, absolutely exhausted, just trudging slowly across the battlefield. There we go, breaks out to a nice little cant there. But right now I'm just kiting a little bit, getting my crossbows back in range. We're going to do a couple volleys here on these Jade halberds. Not make the best contact, but it'll do a tiny little bit of HP damage. Mostly, I'm just trying to finish breaking, fully shatter these Jade crossbowmen so I can bring these cavalry back and use everything all together, because Marcus is no pushover. I mean, even though he's exhausted, 58, 45 attack defense, 360 weapon strength, 50 armor. I mean, he can definitely hold out reasonably well and make a nice little anvil here, fighting especially all these anti-large infantry. They're mostly going to wet noodle him. And so he'll form a nice little anvil here. Air's going to try and screen with his peasant long spears, but how about that? Floppy hats versus said shades. The typical farmer's hat. Anyway, Talons of the Night is going to be used there. I responded with a quick Earthblood, and we'll just keep the HP of these great swords up so you can see the back and forth between these two spells as the heal goes off and then the damage kicks in. And we're able to salvage most of the unit, which, considering how strong of a spell that is, even being further juiced up by a little bit of mastery of the elemental winds here. Very nice. A little bit of stuttering and hiccups, but it's all good. Warrior Priest unleashing his prayer buffs here. That's going to help my units trade that much more cost effectively. And the Great Swords especially getting in here. They've also got the Shield of Faith, of course, for damage resistance. And we'll get some sweet action here of the men of Warhammer. Humans. This is you and I. If we were in this world, this is the best we could aspire to, is to be one of these dudes, right? Professional soldier with fine weapons and armor, well-crafted steel. Very, very cool. Classic Total War, truly. And it's been a pleasure, guys. It's been an honor and a pleasure throughout this early access time period. It's been one of my all-time favorite times of Warhammer, Total War Warhammer, in my career on YouTube. So thank you all so much. Thanks to Creative Assembly. Thanks to Heir of Carthage and all the other content creators, Turin, Italian Spartacus, all the other content creators who had a hand in helping my channel grow and who continue to help me by playing games with me in early access and just generally being awesome people. Of course, thanks to all of you, most of all. Without you guys, I would not be in this position. Be enjoying doing this for you, so thank you all so much. As we finish up here, my unit's just chasing, routing Cathayan infantry off, and then the hero fight, 3v1, the heroes of the Empire. The noble Shugengan cannot stand against the... I was going to say Faith, Steel, Gunpowder, but Faith, Steel, and Bowstring. Amber Bowstring. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed watching that one. What a game, man. Good game to Heir of Carthage. Crazy back and forth. I thought legitimately he had me at a couple points there, but then kind of saw some openings, and it's just classic Total War. I really can't say that enough. Absolutely love it. In terms of the army breakdown here, Marcus carries me pretty heavily. Like I said, I love him in this matchup. The control of Cathay and the ability to deal damage to their high-value single entities. You can almost guarantee they're going to be taking some kind of powerful flying lord in this matchup, so I love his pick here. Royal Griffites also did decently well. I don't know, they're really expensive for what they get. They didn't quite pay for themselves, but tactically, the Terror was really nice in a few key situations. Rockets, same thing. Kind of tactically, it forced Air into me into an uncomfortable situation, even though they didn't pay for themselves. Love the Warrior Priest buffs as well. He pretty much pays for himself in terms of damage value. I mean, I think he's 1100 with the kit I brought him with here, rather. So they're pretty close to paying himself just in terms of his own damage. Then, of course, the support value is hard to measure, but it is massive. 201 kills, 800 value there on some great swords, helping to clean up some tattered units in the end. And then how about this Empire Knight? One of the best performances I've ever seen from Empire Knights, honestly. 178 kills, almost 1,400 damage value. Crazy stuff. 13,000 total damage dealt. Definitely cleaned up a ton of routing units, and that is very important, as it always has been in Total War. Crossbowmen also trade pretty cost effectively. The spearmen, you know, props to them, gold medal. I don't think I've ever seen a unit equal its damage value exactly. With 375, that is exactly how much it costs to bring these guys, so that's fantastic. On Heir of Carthage's side, I mean, dragon-blooded shooting gun lords, rather, just fully get tongue-tied. Super cost effective as always. The Terracotta Sentinel is definitely a rough pick. I don't know that I would necessarily take it always against the Empire, but I kind of get what he was going for there. Maybe just bring in a second Wujing War Compass to kind of act as a weird single entity and then a little bit wider. But Jade Lancers, love them here. One of them 173 kills, 925 gold value, 11,000 damage dealt. Pretty good stuff there. 1861 on this Jade Warrior Halberd. They must have got a hold of the Brawl of Griphites and dealt the majority of the damage to them. Jade Crossbowmen also just awesomely cost-effective. Might have taken the shields here. Definitely would have helped against some of the counter range fire from the Empire. Jade Warriors also just, I mean, they're here. They're a decent front line. One of them pays for themselves. Peasant Long Spears also one of them doubles their damage value. So it's a really nice back and forth, honestly. Like I said, my favorite game I've played in this early access. So hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification every time I upload a new video. You'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.